AgentWire Weekly number 7. This week, AI agents are moving from demos into real workflows, led by Google AI Blog and The Verge AI. The useful question is what builders should test next. We are seeing a clear pattern this week. Whether it is Apple's public beta for iOS 27 or Google's expansion of managed agents in the Gemini API, the industry is moving away from general-purpose hype toward specific, integrated utility. However, this shift brings significant friction. We saw a major security wake-up call with SpaceX AI's Grok tool, which was inadvertently uploading entire user codebases to the cloud. This highlights a fundamental truth for builders: the convenience of an AI tool is worthless if it compromises your security posture or adds unnecessary complexity to your existing build loop. Let's look at the agent landscape. Google is pushing hard on the infrastructure side, updating their managed agents in the Gemini API to handle background tasks and remote MCP. This is a move to make agents more reliable for production, not just for chat. Meanwhile, we have seen research like the AMI medical AI system, which demonstrates that when AI is constrained to a specific, high-stakes domain, it can actually match human performance. This is the blueprint for your own implementations. Stop looking for general intelligence and start looking for domain-specific reliability. If you are building, focus on these managed, API-first approaches rather than relying on black box wrappers that might expose your proprietary data. On the consumer and productivity front, Apple's iOS 27 public beta is finally here, bringing the new Siri AI to a wider audience. The practical reality here is that this is a snow leopard-style update. It is about refining the OS and making the AI feel like a native extension of the device rather than a separate app. This is the gold standard for integration. If your team is evaluating AI tools, ask yourself, does this tool remove a step I already repeat, or does it just add a new tab to my browser? If it is the latter, skip it. We also see Google Images turning 25, with the homepage now proactively recommending content. This is a subtle shift toward predictive UI, which is where the real productivity gains lie, not in generating new content, but in surfacing the right content before you even think to search for it. However, we must talk about the cost of this innovation. Meta's Adam Mosseri recently noted that we are approaching a world where AI token budgets will be managed just like payroll or cloud infrastructure. For operators, this means the free era of experimentation is ending. You need to start tracking your token usage per engineer or per workflow right now. If you are not measuring the ROI of your AI calls today, you will be in for a shock when the CFO starts asking for a breakdown of your LLM spend next quarter. This is not just about cost, it is about efficiency. If an agent is burning tokens to perform a task that a simple script could handle, you are failing the efficiency test. For your practical playbook this week, start by auditing your current AI stack. If you are using a coding assistant, check its data privacy settings immediately. As the SpaceX AI incident proved, you cannot assume that your codebase is staying local. I would recommend testing any new agentic tool on exactly one low-stakes, repeatable workflow like a standard support ticket response or a routine data cleanup task before you ever granted access to your main repository or sensitive customer data. If it cannot handle that one task without hallucinating or leaking data, it is not ready for your production environment. Ignore the hype around autonomous agents that promise to do everything. The most useful tools right now are the ones that act as force multipliers for specific, well-defined tasks. If a tool requires more time to set up and manage than the time it saves you, it is a net negative. Watch the space for more managed agent frameworks, as these are the tools that will actually survive the transition to enterprise-grade reliability. We are moving into a phase where the winners will be the ones who can prove their AI is secure, cost-effective, and genuinely integrated into the tools we already use every day. The useful way to read these updates is as a workflow test, not as a headline contest. Google AI Blog on celebrating 25 years of visual search innovation. The Verge AI on SpaceX AI's Grok programming tool was uploading its users' entire codebase to cloud storage. TechCrunch AI on Apple opens its new Siri AI to everyone with the iOS 27 public beta. Together, they point to one practical check: test it on one repeatable workflow before trusting it with a messy one. If that check is hard to run, the update belongs on the watchlist instead of the production stack. The useful way to read these updates is as a workflow test, not as a headline contest. The Verge AI on the Google Images homepage will recommend photos even before you search. TechCrunch AI on Meta's Adam Mosseri says AI token budgets could soon be capped per engineer. The Verge AI on Siri AI is already changing how I use my iPhone. Together, they point to one practical check: try it only where it removes a step you already repeat. If that check is hard to run, the update belongs on the watchlist instead of the production stack. The useful way to read these updates is as a workflow test, not as a headline contest. Anthropic News, generated feed. On Anthropic commits $10 million to Canadian AI research, Hugging Face blog on data for agents, Google AI blog on expanding managed agents in Gemini API, background tasks, remote MCP, and more. Together, they point to one practical check: test it on one repeatable workflow before trusting it with a messy one. If that check is hard to run, the update belongs on the watchlist instead of the production stack. The useful way to read these updates is as a workflow test, not as a headline contest. Google AI blog on new research shows how Amy, our medical AI, could help manage health conditions. Together, they point to one practical check: test it on one repeatable workflow before trusting it with a messy one. If that check is hard to run, the update belongs on the watchlist instead of the production stack. For Google AI blog, the practical read is celebrating 25 years of visual search innovation. The useful test is to test it on one repeatable workflow before trusting it with a messy one. That matters for operators, founders, and teams testing delegated workflows, because the real question is whether agents are becoming reliable enough to handle more of the workflow. The caveat is that the demo can look more autonomous than the real workflow, so treat this as worth testing only after repeat use. For the Verge AI, the practical read is SpaceX AI's Grok programming tool was uploading its users' entire codebase to cloud storage. The useful test is to compare it against your current build loop, not a polished demo. That matters for developers, technical founders, and teams shipping software with AI, because the real question is whether builders get less context switching and more useful output inside the tools they already use. The caveat is that teams may add another tool without removing any work, so treat this as watch closely only after repeat use. For TechCrunch AI, the practical read is Apple opens its new Siri AI to everyone with the iOS 27 public beta. The useful test is to compare it against your current build loop, not a polished demo. That matters for developers, technical founders, and teams shipping software with AI, because the real question is whether builders get less context switching and more useful output inside the tools they already use. The caveat is that teams may add another tool without removing any work, so treat this as worth testing only after repeat use. My verdict for this week is simple: prioritize integration over innovation. The most impressive AI is the one you do not notice because it is already doing the work for you. Next week, keep a close eye on the fallout from the Grok security incident. I expect we will see a wave of new privacy-first coding tools hitting the market to capitalize on the trust gap. Stay focused on your own build loops, keep your token budgets tight, and only deploy agents where you can measure the output against a human baseline. See you next week.